Welcome, everyone, to A Mexican and a Redneck Father the World. We are your host and surrogate fathers, Juan and Ben. Today we'll be discussing helping those around you cope with death.
So, I guess in this one, this is going to be your frame of expertise because I've dealt with it a little bit, but more from it hasn't been a close level, and I've dealt with more for like a grandparent.
Sure.
I've experienced the death of a grandparent, or actually multiple grandparents. Where do you want to start off, Ben?
Well, it's fresh. It's very fresh. It happened about 9 days ago. And there's just some things, I have kids. I've had to help them.
Mm-hmm.
I have a wife. I've had to help her. My grandfather with his son. And then being on the receiving end of those helping me, people like you, and I do appreciate that. You just coming back and saying, what do you need? Is there anything I can do?
Mm-hmm.
That was huge. I guess we'll start with that since we're friends and friendship matters.
Yeah.
You get to choose who you be around. Definitely when I was amazed, I have some really great men in my life who are friends, and calling people or sending a message or calling people like you and saying, hey, my dad died. And just that almost immediate, I'm sorry, what do you need? I called another friend that we both know, and he was like, oh man, I sent the text message, I'm sorry, and explained in a long message to him and his wife on a group message. And I sent it, and then within 5 seconds, he's just calling. He's like, I didn't read the whole thing. I'm sorry. I just saw that your dad died. And anything you need, just tell me, And I had another friend, I reached out to him, and he was just like, hey, this happened to me recently. And he's like, just here's some stuff. And he was like, I'm going to leave my phone open for you. If I have it on, do not disturb, you're still going to be able to come through. If you need to talk about it, whether you know it or not, don't hesitate. And he was just there with advice, just coming in hard. And I was like, man. And show of support from family, and that was huge. Aunts, cousins, whoever just coming in.
Mm-hmm.
I guess starting with that, being a friend or maybe a little more distant relative, just that text message, hey, I'm sorry to hear about your loss. That's huge. That phone call, if they can handle it, is huge. I know some people did Facebook posts, but I don't have social media, so I didn't see any of that.
Yeah.
But that has I don't know, it's just not as personal, it seems like, as a call or a text or an email or something a little more personal. Seems to go a long way. Not that I don't appreciate people reaching out through social media avenues, but I really did appreciate those personal, I'm going to take time to just shoot you a text or whatever.
So how important was it, with you went, it's funny, you actually went, it was in Texas, right?
Yeah, I had to drive 800 miles to do all this mess.
Crazy. Man, that's crazy. My wife's grandmother actually just passed away, I want to say it's probably about a month and a half ago. And I remember when we got the news about that, I looked at my wife, I was like, are you going to go? And she was like, well, I don't know. And then we weren't sure, because we were, this is something we were expecting. Okay, this is going to happen.
Sure.
We had already tried to make the arrangements as far as just to kind of spend some quality time with her, get to know her, for my kids to be able to get to know their great-grandmother, which I think for me is very, very, very important. I mean, just the relationship with grandparents is just, I value that a lot because that's something I never really got. And then I remember my wife and I were discussing it, hey, are you going to go? And we're like, we just figured it out how she can go. And I think that was special. I think that was special as far as for her to actually be there with her mom and dad and aunts and uncles and all the relatives, and kind of maybe even saying saying goodbye to the loss of a loved one, but then also even in a way, even kind of like helping relatives grieve the loss.
Yes.
How was that for you?
I agree. That is a very fantastic observation on your point. Bravo, Juan, bravo! Golf claps. It was a good observation because that's what I found is having people who love you and who you love around just to talk to share a funny story or maybe a hard story or whatever. That was so helpful. Being able to hug people when you needed to was just, there aren't words, for the peace that brings. And then knowing you don't have to walk through it alone, that's huge. But there is one thing that I didn't consider, and I just thought, well, he's going to be dead and he wants to be cremated. So we'll cremate him, we'll set an urn up at the front of some chapel or whatever, and we'll talk about it. And my grandfather said, you need to see the body. He came in with some good old-fashioned hard old man wisdom, and he's like, you and your sister need to see the body. We need to rent a casket, which if you don't know, you can rent a casket.
Wow.
They will put a body in it that they're going to cremate. Well, not a body. They're going to put the body of your loved one. Let's clarify that. That's important.
You're like, oh, yeah, Dad was looking a little rough, so we got this other guy.
This is a pretty handsome dude.
He's a stand-in. No. He's looking at me like, man, Grandpa was a good-looking guy. It's like,
Grandpa looks like he's about 25. Something's off here. No. There is a closure, I will say, to anyone wondering how to do this. If you want to be cremated or however you want to do it, and I know some circumstances dictate that maybe you won't be able to, but if you can, even in cremation, spending the extra amount of money just to have a body in front of you that you can have a service for and look at. You can touch their hair if you want to, touch their hands, just show. That brings so much closure. Just your family's around, they're validating it, you're seeing it, it's official, there's no argument. That's my dad in that coffin, Those are definitely my dad's hands. He had very distinct, identifiable hands, and that was something that just never seemed to change about him that really stuck out for me. But seeing them, and then for my kids, helping them cope. I've got an 8-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 3-year-old. How do you explain to them your grandpa's dead? How do you go through that process? Because it's like, oh, your grandpa's dead. Oh, I'm sad. My 8-year-old kind of got it. My 5-year-old got a little sad because he knew him some too, but it's like they can only gather so much. But when they walked up and saw that body, my 8-year-old knew exactly what was happening. She actually was shaking. She was so upset and crying so hard. Mm. My 5-year-old teared up and realized, oh, that's my grandpa. He's dead now. And even my 3-year-old just kept saying, oh, did Poppy Dad die? Poppy Dad die? And I'm like, yeah, Poppy Dad die. Oh. And so they just kind of stood there and stared and kind of got it, that's my grandfather. And that was a big thing, was coping and helping them. And seeing people who loved him grieve and knowing he was loved by more than just me, that was a big thing too. That's something I didn't even expect.
Yeah.
So, oh my goodness, look at all these people who loved him.
I think you're absolutely right as far as that. I remember my experience when my grandfather passed away. This is from my mom's side of the family. So both my grandparents, they live in Mexico. And I was raised I was raised here in the States, and I remember when my grandfather passed away, my mom and I, we weren't able to go. I mean, it was just we just weren't able to go as far as to go to the funeral. And then too, our family in Mexico was actually kind of like, they were very secretive about it, as far as like, it was weird. It was weird. Like, they didn't want to tell us.
Weird.
Because they were like, they knew that my mom was going to like do whatever she had to do to go and see him.
Wow.
So my mom didn't get the closure. I didn't get the closure. And then we had my uncle-in-law, emphasis on the uncle-in-law, because he wasn't a blood uncle.
Okay.
Uncle through marriage. He comes to our house and just tells my mom straight up, no compassion, no like sympathy. He's like, hey, your dad just died. All right, bye. And then my cousin does the same thing to me, and then like I just
Kind of like the way you would say, "Hey, the ice cream truck's here."
Yeah, exactly. And I remember hearing my mom crying,
Wow.
and then I start crying,
Wow.
and my cousin looks at me. He's like, "Why are you crying? He's already dead." Well, he got to see him.
Oh, wow.
He got to see him and say goodbye.
Yeah.
I never got that,
Wow.
and so now as a 36-year-old man, I'm like, I have memories of him.
Mm-hmm.
I have very precious memories of my grandfather. He was a musician. He was a musician by trade, and it's kind of neat, man. He had his guitars, and he would not let anybody touch his guitars, except me. He would let me play with his guitars, and like he always desired for somebody in the family to pick up the trade and become a musician. And when he passed away, that's when I decided, I was like, I want to join the band. I'm not musically inclined at all. I got kicked out of the church choir, and then
That's rough, man.
yeah, they're
Like, the church don't even want you to sing.
yeah, and they were
Sorry.
and it's like so I remember picking that up, just like just trying to learn how to read music, just kind of like honor him in a way. But when my grandmother died, this is from my dad's side of the family, I was there. I was actually able to be there and see and say goodbye to her. We had the chance to say goodbye to her, and I was able to see the body and go through the whole funeral. And it was a very different process as far as being able to see a loved one go and see like, oh, that's their body. So I can relate with that as far as that, what you're saying. I think that's absolutely important. And it may be some of those things like, well, they're already gone, but getting that closure is just very important.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It goes in that category of things in life that you can't explain, but they just are. You get a sense of closure. It's one of those things where you're like, okay, this is done. He completed his journey. You know that, okay, Grand Prairie, Texas is the last place his human body will exist, and his spirit is gone now. It's wherever it goes next, and that really does just kind of make you go, okay, that's done. It's sad, but at the same time, there is relief in it. And relief goes a long way in these moments, being so fresh, and there's a lot more stories we'll tell and talk about, because it seems like if you know just a handful of people, at some point in your life, you're going to have to deal with death, So we can definitely talk about this more, especially since this is kind of a father podcast. Might have to talk about my dad again, but that's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay. Yeah. But be there for people. And don't be afraid. Yeah, it was my dad who died, but I also enjoyed listening to other people share their stories about him. That helped me, Let me tell you this funny story about your dad, or I remember this one time your dad did this. That just their grieving process of getting it out there and trying to encourage me, but at the same time they were getting it out. man, that was like, man, I'm able to help a little bit too, even in my state of mind. You know, I don't know, I was thankful that I was able to be there for some others as well, and tell them, hey, you know, my dad really loved you, you know, and that really hit hard for some people, and you know, you were his favorite or whatever, you know, that kind of stuff, that really landed and seemed to go a good ways. And in just sharing my stories, it seemed to help a few people also.
Yeah, for
So,
sure. I'm sure there's many people out there who are going to be very thankful for just even sharing your perspective and just sharing these thoughts.
Sure. And we thank y'all for listening to a Mexican and a redneck father of the world. We are Juan and Ben. We love you, and we are proud of you for who you are and your willingness to make change. Y'all have a great day.